to the One Lonely Owl podcast. Nope, One Lonely Owl YouTube channel. This won't be an episode of the podcast. This is just going to be what I'm going to be calling Drop In for a Yarn. I previously called it Spin Me a Yarn, but I'm going to change the name to Drop In for a Yarn because spin suggests that we'll be talking about spinning, which I do not do, and didn't want it to be confusing. For those of you that are new here, I am originally from Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, on the very far east coast, and I currently live in central Alberta, Canada. I am on my front deck, which is a very different place than the normal background that you see, and I'm going to be just chatting and spending some time with you today because I don't really have a lot of podcast material for you. I am sitting outside, so you may hear some things like animals or birds, what have you. My dog is around, so you might have just heard him drinking his water. His water's just right there. So you may have heard him. You might be paused in a moment or so to call him back because he's wandering around the property. But I just wanted to pop in and just have a little bit of time with you because I am not going to be recording a normal podcast episode. And I know that I'm going to be starting chemo treatments in a couple of weeks, not even, in less than a couple of weeks. So I wanted to spend some time with you before things kind of got nasty. If you are new to my channel, the channel is primarily a podcast about knitting, although we do talk about other crafty projects as well. My craft of choice generally, though, is knitting, so that's what I do spend my time doing. I am a current cancer patient. If you can't tell, I've got the short hair. That's not on purpose. I lost all my hair in my last chemo rounds, and I'm going to be going through another round of chemo starting the end of this month. I recently had a surgery, and it was called a radical hysterectomy, where all of my bits were taken, and I am in the midst of recovery for that. I will apologize. I'm sort of looking all over the place. There's a lot going on the property, and I'm not used to staring at my face. I'm actually just used to looking at a camera, and I'm using just my phone this time to see how that goes. Like I said, I'm just sort of trialing something today where we're out on my front deck. So with that, my plan was just to kind of have a little chat and maybe do a little bit of knitting and share with you what I've been working on. Like I said, I don't have a ton of content for the podcast, so spoiler, that means that I don't have a lot of finished objects. I do have a couple, but I also don't have a lot that I'm working on. I will share with you what it is that I am going to be knitting on while we chat. So I've taken a page out of Kevin's book, actually, I guess Kevin and Ray from the Needles at the Ready podcast. I have probably 1.5 million of mini skeins that I collect with advent calendars and whatnot, and I just decided that I finally needed to do something with them. I don't particularly enjoy scrappy projects except in a blanket format, so I decided that I was going to I'd been debating doing a Cozy Memories blanket by Polka Dot Creek. Polka Dot Creek, if you are new here, you have not heard me talk about before, but if you are not new here, I talk about it on every episode and every chance I get. Polka Dot Creek is my favorite yarn dyer and yarn store in Airdrie, Alberta, Canada. Shelley is the owner and lead dyer at Polka Dot Creek, and she is one of my favorite people, as well as just an exceptional businesswoman. She does a really great job with what she does. So I don't know where I was going with that. Minis. Oh, the Cozy Memories blanket. So the Cozy Memories blanket that was written by Shelley DuPont. Excuse me. It's a mitered square blanket, and it is meant to use up your extras and your scraps and whatnot. My problem with that one, though, was that although I had lots of scraps and lots of minis, I didn't particularly want to be limited. I wanted to be able to use up as much of my yarn as possible. So let's say the Cozy Memories blanket uses 12 grams. If I had a 20-gram skein, a mini skein, I would have 8 grams left over, which means I wouldn't be able to do 2 squares with it. Um, and I didn't quite know exactly how many grams it took to do the Cozy Memories, but I didn't want to have a bunch of mini balls left over. So I decided that I was going to, like I said earlier, take a page out of Ray and Kevin's book from Needles at the Ready, and I was going to do the Jelly Roll by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. And so that is what I'm currently working on. So I'm on my first stripe, first row, first stripe. I don't know exactly how she describes it, but first, before I start to connect all the other pieces to it, I have to decide how long I want to make it. I was watching Needles at the Ready yesterday, and I realized that Ray had a really great way of measuring his, laying on the couch. He wants it to be able to cover his feet as well as come up to his neck. So I definitely want it to be at least that long. I'm not sure if I want it to be long enough for, say, like a single bed. I definitely don't want to make it any bigger than that, but I do want to make sure it's long enough to at least cover my body when I'm using it. So yeah, right now working on the Jelly Roll by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. The minis that I showed you, I'm just going to finish this row and then I'll show you the colors again. Yarn Indulgences is a yarn dyer in Ontario, Canada. I'm pretty sure it's Ontario, Canada. I know it's Canada, but I'm pretty sure it's Ontario. I will confirm that, and if I'm wrong, I will note below. But Yarn Indulgences is the very first advent calendar that I ever purchased, and that is where I got all of my yarn from the last 3 colors. Well, you can't even really see. So the color that I'm using right now is a white with blue and pink speckles. I'm not sure if you can see much of that right there. But this pink stripe, as well as the green stripe, all came from that yarn calendar that I got, oh my goodness, I'm gonna guess 2018 maybe. So like I said, I'm very good at collecting advent calendars and minis, but I'm not very good at using them up, so I have a ridiculous amount of minis that I need to get through. So I'm just slowly knitting away on this because it is meditative and easy, and it's all garter stitch, and I enjoy it immensely. I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it when I have to get to the point where I have to knit so many and then pick up every row to join it on to the other side. I'm not sure how that's going to go for me. I'm not particularly a fan of picking up stitches, but I don't know, 1 stitch per row is probably not going to be the death of me, but we'll see. So to be 100% transparent, I have only been working on this blanket with the exception of a couple of finished objects that I did. I was, in my last podcast episode, I had mentioned that I was doing some work on vest number 2, as well as my flax light or flax sock by Tin Can Knits. And what else was I working on? Oh, my vanilla socks. I literally have not touched one of those projects. They're still in the basement. They're still sitting right next to my camera where I left them when I did the last podcast episode. So I will be fully transparent. The sock requires a heel, which requires me to pick up stitches and cut in and knit the heel, which requires decreases. And I know it's not difficult. I can do them in my sleep, but I don't have the brain space to pick up stitches, and I don't have the patience to remember when to do a decrease round. The vest is so early on in the process that, again, I didn't really want to pick it up. It's not far enough along that it feels like I'm getting anywhere yet, so it's a little tough to kind of feel like you have any mojo when you're working on that one. And we all know the saga that is the flax light or the flax sock. That poor sweater, I don't know that I'm ever gonna finish it. I know I will finish it. I've always said, sorry, there's vehicles driving by. I always said that I would finish it, and I just don't know. I don't know when that's going to be, so I'm not going to make any promises. I'm happy knowing that I love that sweater, and I will love that sweater when it's completed, but I just don't know when that's going to be, and I'm not gonna break my back at any given point trying to do that. So that's where we are with the things that I'm not working on, which is again why there is no podcast episode this week. So I was wanting to do a little bit of knitting, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be doing. And so I decided that I wanted to do something really easy, very much a palette cleanser. And I think I've mentioned this before. If I haven't mentioned it, it's definitely on my Ravelry page. Just 1 second, please. Sorry about that. Where was I? So I was interrupted by my husband, who just gave me a call. In case you're interested, I'm drinking organic blackberry lemonade, which is delicious. I think I was talking about this and yarn indulgences, and I was knitting away. I'm now on this white stripe with pink and blue speckles. Oh, I know what I was gonna share with you the knitting needles that I am using. And unfortunately, since recording this, the company that made these knitting needles no longer are in business, or if they're in business, I don't believe they make the knitting needles anymore. So I was told about these knitting needles by Polka Dot Creek Shelley Dupont, and they are signature fiber arts, signature needle arts. They are, I'll show you the needles. I'm knitting this on the called for size, which is 2.75 millimeter or a size US 2. I'm not sure if you can really see that. This is a cute little pink needle with a little bell looking tip, and if you can see, if it'll try to focus on my face or not, but the tip of the needle is quite sharp. They come in these little cases, which I absolutely love. So you can take off the top, you can put your needles in, and then store them. Like I said, absolutely love these, but unfortunately cannot get them anymore. I don't know, quite honestly, what I will ever use these for other than this blanket, because I don't usually knit really small things on small gauge needles, so I'm not exactly sure what I'll do except knit a bunch of these blankets with it. I have a sneaking suspicion this blanket is going to take me quite some time, so these needles will be in rotation, or I guess out of rotation. They'll be in this project until it's completed, so these will be a while. I can't recall what I was talking about before. I do recall a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. I was talking about having to do a palette cleanser. That's what I was referring to. And how, if you can hear that, there's a plane flying overhead, a little bush plane. I was talking about how I didn't have any work, or didn't have any gumption or any sort of want or need or desire to work on any of the projects that I currently have on the needles, and for various different reasons, because I didn't have the brain space, or I didn't have the motivation, or where the project was in its how far along the project was and all that sort of thing. So I ended up making a couple of, and I will show you. I've lost it. Where did it go? Hold on. There it is. I'm sitting on it. So I think I've said this before. If you've been here any length of time, I'm pretty sure I've talked about these. These are Grandma's favorite dishcloth, I think. And I have made so many of these. I've made hundreds of them, probably. It's a really nice palette cleanser for me. This is made with Lily sugar. What is it called? Lily. What is it called? You're all like, it's one of the most popular cottons out there. Lily sugar and something. Oh my goodness! I'll write it along the bottom here. Um, anyway, it's a just a plain old cotton, a size 4. So I think that's a worsted weight uh, cotton, and I don't even know if it's the same as Grandma's favorite dishcloth, but it's the pattern that I do in my head that I've done ever since I was a teenager. Um, if you are new here, and even if you're not new here, I think I've told this story before. When I was in grade 11, my parents were working out of town, and out of town a fair bit, the town that I lived in. And I grew up in a town where every single person from my extended family lived in the same town. So it was a very I was raised by the community kind of thing. So at any given point, I was staying at my grandmother's place. So if mom and dad were not going to be home for a little while, I would go stay at my grandmother's place. And she had a spare room, and I remember sitting on that bed, and my grandmother would buy me balls of yarn, and I would sit and knit her dishcloths out of these balls of yarn, and I knit her so many dozens and dozens of those dishcloths. And I remember this particularly very 90s peach color, and she probably had, like I said, dozens of that color alone. Anyway, now anytime that I make any of those dishcloths, I think of her. I love them. They're my favorite to use at home, so I have them in my home. I gift them to people when, I've got a gift to give away. I know a lot of people really enjoy them, so I give them as gifts as well. And like I said, they're really great as a palette cleanser. So when I feel like I need to just sort of start fresh, and when I just want to knit and I don't want to think, those dishcloths are where I land, because I know that pattern by heart, and I could quite almost literally do that in my sleep. So that's where I started. I did a couple of those, and I showed you the one already. It's in this sort of burnt orange color. I don't have any plans for them. I have a little basket of them where I just throw them in, and when I need more, I go down to the basket and I darn in a couple of ends, and then I get another dishcloth. Or if I need to give them away, I've been thinking maybe I'll give some to my son's teacher as a gift this year, but we will see. I'm not totally sure. So when I was finished my little palette cleanser, and when I finally got a couple of finished objects off the needles, which, I mean, I can knit one of those in a couple of hours, so I knit maybe 1.5 in an evening. I was able to kind of think about what it was that I wanted to spend my time doing. And I ended up finally deciding on a scrappy blanket. And I think I mentioned this already. The reason I picked this particular scrappy blanket is because you can use the entire skein, or your entire mini skein. So if you have a mini skein collection like I do, you can use up the entire mini skein if you wish. You don't have to. I will share in just a second a little bit about what my plan is going to be. I do have some leftovers. I don't have as many leftovers as I do mini skeins, so I know that I've got 20 grams at least of every single color that I have. Except if I've got leftovers of a mini skein from a sock or something like that. My plan is, once I figure out how tall I want this to be, which I've decided I'm going to use Ray's measuring method, and I'm going to put it on the floor and see how tall it comes to me. So let's just, for curiosity's sake, see where we're at right now. So it's just at my chest here. So I'm going to make it so that it's at least this long. So I think I'm going to have to do at least this other color, maybe 4. So I'm going to guess 4 mini skeins long. My plan when I'm done, I don't want the lines to match up. And so if I'm going to be using a bunch of mini skeins, which I'll show you again in a second, my plan with all of my minis, my plan is to, how many times can I say my plan? I'm going to take a mini skein and knit halfway and then change colors, and so that it'll sort of look like a brick layout. And then when I get back to the top, I'll use the other half of the mini skein that I used at the bottom down here. So the only one that will be split, there'll be one color that is split from the top and the bottom, and then all the other colors will be full still in between, but they'll sort of go from middle of one block to the middle of the next block, so that it's not, I think I'm describing this, but so that the lines don't all line up and then it looks, I don't want it to, I kind of want it to look like a deck when you build a deck, and when you put flooring down, you alternate so that it, am I making myself clear? Am I, am I explaining that well? I'm not totally sure. Anyway, the other thing I said I was going to do was I was going to show you the mini skeins. So I've got a full 24 or 25 mini skeins from the Yarn Indulgences calendar, which I have picked out a handful and thrown them in my bag. And I'm just picking them out and rolling them up at random. I'm sort of, some of them are these really nice natural skein colors with just flecks of color in them. And I'm trying to alternate those with some of the darker skeins. So the ones that are really, really saturated with color. There's this nice purple and tan colored one. I really like that one. I'm excited to see what that one looks like. This one here, this brown and teal and green. Quite like that one. Like I said, I've got a full, I can't even tell you how many mini skeins I have. I know for sure I've got 25 of these. And then I have this bag, which is the last 2 years of my Canadian countdown to Christmas calendar. And so these are, I would say they're Christmas, but they're not very, like if you were to look at this Mary Margaret Fibers, for example, it's called Uncle Clark, Are You Santa Claus? This is definitely not what I would think of when I think of a typical Christmas colorway, which I'm quite happy for that. Like when I do Christmas advents, I don't particularly want all green and red, but I do quite like that I can now take this and put it into my blanket and no one will know, none the wiser. Same thing, this one is Save the Neck for Me Clark by Cog Yarns. This is a beautiful blue and it's got some speckles in there. I can throw this in my blanket and again, nobody would really know the difference. Now there are some that are quite Christmassy, like this one here is quite Christmassy. This one is an Allison Barnes yarn. So this one is, it's a bit nipply out, 75-25 fingering weight. So this one is sort of a natural color with red and green speckles. Again, really super Christmassy. So not particularly going to put this one in the blanket, but you never know. It might end up in there. We'll decide. But I've got an entire bag that quite honestly I can barely fit anything else into. I can't even close it fully, of minis that are going to end up in a blanket or something, some sort of scrappy project. So hopefully this blanket that I'm working on. So I don't really have anything else that I wanted to talk about. I don't really and quite honestly, I don't know how much time I've spent talking other than on this particular video. I wanted to drop in and spend a little bit of time with you, like I said, because I don't intend on having a ton of time when I start chemo again. So I start chemo on May 29th and I don't have an appointment yet, so I have to figure out the time, but usually day 4, 5, and 6 following that session, I will not be in very good shape. The 29th is on a Wednesday. So if I'm lucky, I'll have had an opportunity to have one more podcast update before then, or at least another drop in for a yarn episode just so that we can have a little bit of a chat. Like I said, I don't have any finished objects other than those 2 dishcloths, which are super simple. I only have this particular work in progress that I'm working on as a project. All the others are just kind of languishing and sitting in hibernation, which I have talked about this before, but I'm not pushing myself. I'm not pressuring myself to do anything in particular with those. I just really want to enjoy the process, and that's what I'm doing. Now that it's the weather is starting to turn, and finally in Alberta we're getting some leaves on the trees and things are starting to bud and the sun is out a little. I'm really, really anxious to just kind of do what I'm doing right now, and that is just sitting out on the front deck and having a glass of lemonade and drinking a glass of lemonade while I knit. Yeah. So what's up with you? What are you up to? I haven't said this yet, but I wanted to thank all of my viewers. If you are new here, thank you so much for giving us a try. I am a small YouTube channel, and I don't do this for any other reason other than because I enjoy it. And having you here with me is all the reason why I do this. I love the community that it builds. And if you're not new here, if you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. There's a car coming down the road, so I'll be quiet for a second in case that gets a bit loud. Yeah. So if you're not new here, thank you so much for returning. I appreciate each and every one of you that comes to visit with me. Like I said, even if it is just to sit and knit for a little bit, if it's to hear about my cancer journey and where I'm at with that, I'll be brutally honest with you, I'm kind of sick of talking about it. I talk about it all the time, and it's quite old. I can't tell you how good it is to talk about something other than that. Sorry, there's a big rig that just drove by. So I've enjoyed spending my time with you today. I really appreciate you popping in. Again, nothing really going on. Just wanted to say hello, show you a couple of things that I've been working on. Sit with me on my deck while I spend some time knitting. Show you the couple of dishcloths that I did as my palette cleanser. Listen to the birds with me if you can hear them. Isn't that great? If you can't hear them, you think I'm just sitting here being quiet by myself. All right, so with that, I will say farewell. Thank you so much for joining. Come back again. If you are new and you want to go back and watch some of the older episodes, please feel free to go back on my channel. There's, I don't know, 16 or 17 episodes prior to this one, and you can spend some time catching up. There's a whole entire Vlogmas if you want to binge some of that. And like I said, if I'm able, I will be doing one more episode between now and before I start my next session at chemo, which is the 29th of May. And if I don't, I don't, and I will see you on the other side when I'm feeling well enough to do that again. Thanks again so much for joining me. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.